All right. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, and by offering the peace and blessings of God to His most beloved prophets, we start our seminar entitled Knowledge, Structuring the Mind and Awakening Consciousness. Now I'm recording this session while having already done it with plenty of attendance, but unfortunately I forgot to record it then. So now I'm re-recording it without obviously the attendance, but this was for two reasons. The first one is that I wanted to post it on my YouTube channel. Second reason is for those who didn't or weren't able to attend the first session, they can at least get familiar with the content of the first session. So I would like not to introduce myself. Of course, you got my information in front of you. But obviously, I'm not simply my name or profession, email, etc. But I am my beliefs, my ideas, my opinions, my actions also. So I would like you not to pay attention too much to the messenger, but to the message. So let's begin. Now, before embarking on our journey, we need to agree upon the objectives of this seminar. Why am I doing this? And what is the purpose of that? The first objective that I'm setting for myself and for my listeners, attendants, anyone who's interested in the seminar, is to structure the way your mind processes, analyzes, and judges things. All right, these are key elements of thinking. So we are trying here to structure this and to make it, work in a way that is simple and clear, but also correct. The second objective is understanding critical concepts and their real-life applications. We will see different concepts throughout the seminar, which will take place and time throughout many sessions. So we need to understand these critical concepts. They are very important, and to be able to apply them in our daily life. The third objective is to differentiate between truth and falsehood. This is the most important objective that I have for myself and for you, and to get rid of confusion and ambiguity for once and for all. So this is the biggest objective that we have, is to be able to make a difference between what is correct and what is wrong, between the truth and lies or falsehood, which equally means to be found and not to be lost. All right? So this journey hopefully can help you to be found. Many people are lost in our time and age due to different reasons that we will tackle in this seminar. Now let's see the outline of our seminar. Our seminar is separated or divided into two different parts. In the first week, inshallah, we will see 4 lessons. The first one is what is knowledge. The second is the two sides. The third, power dynamics. And last, types of science. I am deliberately not dwelling into each lesson, so not to spoil you, and to keep your curiosity until we tackle each lesson separately. In the second part, which is the practical part, so the first part is the theoretical part, where we will be introduced to different concepts. And the second part is where we apply these concepts. So in this part, we will see economic systems in the fifth lesson. The sixth lesson, media and entertainment. The seventh, gender and sexuality. The last one, the new world order. So hopefully you find this outline interesting and you keep on following this seminar. Of course, for those who will watch this on YouTube, I will attach the link of each seminar so you can join it live. Now, let's get to the method of analysis, which is structuralism. Now, what do we mean by it? So, structuralism is an intellectual and methodological approach that analyzes phenomena by examining the underlying structures and relationships within it. So, it's a theoretical approach. It's a theory, but it is applied. Why? To analyze phenomena, to analyze things, concepts, whatever is seen in this world. You can apply structuralism to understand it and to find out what is the structure of that thing or concept. So it focuses on two things, the structure obviously, and relationships within it. So the relationships that form this structure, we will analyze them carefully to understand everything about such concept or thing. To give you more information about this theory, it was first used by Émile Durkheim and Ferdinand de Saussure, who were both sociology thinkers, sociologists. So they analyzed culture and human psychology through this approach. So first it was used in social sciences, and then later on it was used in literary criticism. So literary critics used it to analyze texts, whether it is short story or novels or poems. And it was proven to be very successful and very effective in literary criticism. Such approach, I argue, is extremely critical and effective. Such approach, I argue, is extremely critical and effective in analyzing concepts, since all things are made of structure and form relationships. Everything is made of structure. There is nothing, whether abstract or material, that is not made of structure. So we need to understand structure then to understand this. And everything forms relationships. Of course, to make a structure, you need different parts. These parts form relationships. If you understand the parts, plus the relation between them, then you got nothing else to understand. You have understood everything. Now, similarly, there is another theory which is called formalism. It was also used in literary criticism. But this theory focuses more so on the elements and the general form. So it's very much similar to structuralism with few differences. And I argue both are very critical and very effective as a criteria. Now, how can we understand structure? There are many ways to do so, but one way that is very clear and simple is to ask the WH questions, such as what, why, how, when, where, how. I apologize for this. I lost my internet. So I said such as what, why, how, and where, as well as which and who, of course. So when you answer these questions, you understand the structure, plus the elements and the relationships between them. Now, before we move on to the first lesson, we need to understand, or we need to clarify how we should manage our session. Of course, this was agreed upon in the first session that I had, but this is just for the others who will join us, inshallah, in the next sessions. So, of course, me, the host, will take care of all the explanation and analysis and presenting the slides. Participants also are encouraged to take notes, and they will have the chance to share their thoughts and ask their questions at the end of the session, where we will have a Q&A session, 10 to 15 minutes. Of course, I will ask frequently the attendance, as long as the session is going on, and attendants are welcome to answer my questions. Of course, I would like this session to be, or this whole seminar to be interactive, to be fun for me and for all of you. So after the end of each lesson, attendants are urged to answer a little quiz that summarizes the whole seminar or the whole lesson. All right, we will have a quiz at the end of each lesson. This quiz will serve as a revision of what we saw to, again, set the structure clearly and to retain the important information. Now, something fun that I have for you is a competition which will be based on this quiz. So those who are participating in this quiz are promised to win a prize at the end of this seminar. I will keep score of the correct answers, and at the end we will have a winner, inshallah. So this is just to encourage you to be more interactive in this seminar. Now I think we are done with the introductions. So let's get going to the first lesson. Knowledge, which is obviously the big title of the seminar. What is knowledge? Knowledge is, simply put, the sum of information about everything. There are other definitions of knowledge. Some say that knowledge is the total information known to humankind. However, I believe this definition is not very extensive and comprehensive, because it leaves out the knowledge that humans do not know. And obviously that is knowledge. So we should always remind ourselves that we do not know everything. In fact, we know very little. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You have been given of knowledge except a little. Right? That is the word of God. the all-knowing. Now, why do we acquire knowledge? This is a very important question. Many people are acquiring knowledge without knowing why. That is why they are not structured in their thinking. They are only floating around without a real purpose. So one of the reasons is to navigate life easier. Of course, when you know a correct information, it leads you to understand more about life. And therefore, applying this correct information will lead you to an easier life. Another reason is that of making difference between what is true and what is false. This is the biggest objective we talked about. We should make difference between what is true and what is false. If your knowledge does not lead you to do that, then what is the point of your knowledge? Your knowledge is meaningless. What is the point of being wrong and knowing so much? There is no point. Another reason is to reach the ultimate truth. Now, what is the ultimate truth? This is a critical concept, but we will leave the answer later on. Of course, ultimate, it means the biggest. So what is the biggest truth? Of course, anything has its truth and has its falsehood. But what is the ultimate truth that summarizes every truth? Another reason is to discover or invent new things, etc. This is a human endeavor, of course. We are born with this desire to invent and discover. And actually, it was an order from God Himself to go on discovering the world. But why? Always ask the reason why. Now let's find out about the different categorization of knowledge. One categorization we have is that of true correct knowledge or false incorrect knowledge. This is the biggest categorization we have. So let's see the characteristics of each type. Correct knowledge leads to the truth. Of course, if you are correct, you are truthful. You cannot be incorrect and truthful at the same time. This is basic logic. And to give an example for that, if you know that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, you go and boil water at 100 degrees, and you get the result that you want. But someone who thought that water boils at 80 degrees, he puts it under a fire of 80 degrees and it does not boil. So he is deceived from his incorrect knowledge. So he was led to falsehood. All right. And this is a very basic example. You can apply this to any other example, whether big or small. Now, true knowledge has strong proof that stands on its ground, and it is practically impossible to defeat it. Correct knowledge also follows sound reason and logic. Sound reason, this is a precise term because there are other types of reason. Not all reason is reasonable. All right? Reason can be sometimes crazy, but we don't call it sound reason. And logic, of course, logic is something that was implied in our brain to understand things in a common sense, of course, it can never be the end all be all, but it is a beneficial way, beneficial instrument by which we can touch things sometimes. So sound reason and sound logic, because logic also is not always reasonable and sound. And last, true knowledge is clear and understandable. This is a very important and special characteristic of true knowledge. It is clear, it is not vague, and it is understandable by anyone who wants to understand. All right? It matters if you want or not whether you can or not. Anyone can, as long as you have a functioning brain and a good heart. Now let's move on to false, incorrect knowledge. False knowledge leads to falsehood and deception. So to the opposite of true knowledge, you are deceived by false knowledge. And of course, there is no bigger deception than the one some people will find after death. Why? Because they were led astray by the falsehood they were believing in. Incorrect knowledge has weak proof and arguments. Some people claim that incorrect knowledge has no proof. No, this is wrong. Incorrect knowledge does have proof, but it is weak and inconsistent. It is weak and inconsistent. It does not stand on its ground, and it is easier to deny it and to prove that it is wrong. If you follow sound reason, of course. If you don't, then it would be very difficult for you to even differentiate between these different categories. False knowledge follows desires and personal feelings. This is also an important characteristic. When you see a person who relies on his desires and feelings to judge and to or to make it a source of knowledge, then you can easily detect that this person has false knowledge. They do not follow the facts, but rather they follow their whims and desires. And whims and desires can come in different shapes and forms. Some people can cover them with some sort of logic, but this logic is not sound. So if you crack enough, you will understand that behind the masquerade, there is simply whims and desires and very weak arguments. Last but not least, incorrect knowledge tends to be obscure and complicated. There's also a key difference between the two categories. We said that true knowledge is clear, but incorrect knowledge tends to be obscure. People of falsehood, they like to make it obscure. Why? To, again, masquerade it, to hide the weak structure behind it. So that's why they tend to make it complicated, to fool the ignorant, to make him believe that complication equals thinking and equals knowledge. But that is not correct. Let's see another distinction: higher knowledge and lower knowledge. Now, higher knowledge deals with the important and crucial aspects of life, such as existential matters like the purpose of life, the world's origin, and the question of truth, falsehood, meaning, etc. Of course, these are examples. Not to limit this, there are other very important and crucial aspects, but these are the biggest. All right. So this is what higher knowledge deals with. It revolves around these subjects. We can also add to higher knowledge beneficial knowledge, like medicine, literature, physics and chemistry, etc. Of course, other beneficial types of knowledge we know, like maths, for example, astronomy, etc. Okay. Now, let's move on to lower knowledge. It deals with insignificant and minor issues, such as hobbies, preferences, or entertainment. These are matters that do not matter in the big picture of life, and usually do not lead to the ultimate truth. However, they can lead at times to falsehood. How is that? Now, in our day and age, we have many people who are so concerned with these insignificant matters while completely disregarding the crucial aspects of life. Now, when you give more importance to lower knowledge and less importance to higher knowledge, that is where you are led to falsehood. Because real meaning is extracted from higher knowledge. There is no real meaning in insignificant things. But people of such kind will try to attach meaning of their life, of their existence, through these insignificant matters, making it much bigger than it already is. For example, people who are big fan of football, for example, people who support their clubs and they travel with them and pay a lot of money for that, and they are die-hard fans. They call them die-hard fans. Why? They are ready to die for their club. For them, real meaning exists and is attached to that hobby, to that entertainment, to that preference. So they replaced the higher knowledge with lower knowledge. They replaced the crucial aspects of life with the insignificant and minor issues, which results at the end to following falsehood and being deceived at the end. Now we have an important question. How did we differentiate between these forms of knowledge? How? Of course, now we understand that these categories exist, but why did we put such thing here and not on the other side? Why is not the question of meaning from lower knowledge? Why? This is an important question. And that's where we will be introduced to the concept of criterion. What is a criterion? So a criterion is the standard of measurement, judgment, and criticism. It is like a stick of measurement, as you see in this illustration. It is a stick that you use to measure things and to judge them, also to criticize it. Why? Why do we need this criteria? To properly apologies, to properly test and evaluate something. All right, we need to test things and evaluate them so that we can extract conclusions. All right. Now, how? How can we apply this criteria? By applying a criterion, we analyze whether something or someone has met the set requirements of said criterion or not. All right, so we have a set of requirements. If such thing or such person meets this set, it means that he is approved. And the opposite is true. For example, and we should know that everything and everyone have a criteria. No one doesn't. And it is used in our daily life. For example, if you apply for a job, the company you are applying for has a set of requirements, which is a criterion, to evaluate and test people who are applying. So if you succeed, it means that you have met the set requirements. If you didn't, it means that you didn't. Of course, this is barren any treachery or in falsehood. We are talking here about someone who is using this criterion in the correct manner. So this is a criterion, and it is very important, of course. We cannot live without a criterion. People who live without it just don't realize that they actually have one, but they have a false criteria. And this is where we will see the correct criteria and understand that there are different types of criteria. Anyone has a criteria, we said. But are all of them equal? Are all of them correct? Do they all give the right conclusion? This is the key question. There are two types of criteria. One that is objective and one that is subjective. So the objective criteria is a criteria that does not change. It is set in stone. All right? The measurements are set. They do not change. We can say that they are not flexible to a big degree. They give you the strict measurements. All right? But subjective criteria is not the same. It is inconsistent and changes from one person to another. Now let's have some examples of objective criteria. The first example, and the most used in throughout history, is revelation. It is the revealed knowledge of God through his prophets. Now I'm talking in general here, not a specific religion. It's revelation as a whole. Because even people who believe in polytheism, they believe that it was revealed by God, even though they believe of many gods. But of course, every polytheistic religion has what has what they call Godhead. The second objective criteria is undeniable facts. Facts that were tested. Information that is undeniable. It has been tested and proven to be correct. So we cannot deny it. And it does not change. If you say here 1 + 1 = 2, you go to Taiwan and they agree with you because it was tested. This is common knowledge. So this is an undeniable fact. It is an objective criteria also. The last example is sound reason and inclination. We already talked about sound reason. But inclination, what is inclination? In Arabic, al-fitra. It's something that is born with humans naturally. You are born with it. And through it you can understand some things without having any acquired knowledge. All right? This is, we can say, prehistoric knowledge. Even if, before you were born, or the moment you were born, you already have the capacity to know that. How so? Well, there are different answers to this question. But in Islam, for example, it is God who created us with this inclination as a as a criteria to use it to reach the truth. All right? So that's why we include it in objective criteria. An example, anyone, no matter from where they are, or even their beliefs or their ideologies, agree that stomping on a baby is a wrong thing. Morally, it is wrong, it is cruel, it is harsh. Now, even if we never taught anyone that stomping on a baby is wrong, they will still know that it is wrong. How so? Inclination. It is the prehistoric knowledge that was already embedded in the human. Now, people who believe in evolution think that it is embedded, but through DNA. But the first human, of course, did not know this. So through time, everyone agreed that it is the wrong thing, and therefore it has become something embedded in our DNA. This is obviously a pile of nonsense, because to say that first human did not understand this or know it, then how did they come to agree at some point that it was wrong? There is no reason for them all to agree on such thing, because then you will have no objective criteria. And this is why it is very important to understand and make a difference between these different criteria, so that you know that subjective people do not have anything to stand on. Now let's see subjective criteria. Personal feelings and opinions. We said that subjective criteria is inconsistent from one person to another. It changes. Of course, my opinions and feelings are not the same as yours. And then we have no common ground. All right? So people like to say we agree to disagree and just move on. These are subjective people. Whether things discussed are crucial or not, they always like to agree to disagree. But even subjective people find themselves sometimes using objective criteria, because you can never live 100% without an objective criteria. Human ideologies and theories. Now, I included this in subjective criteria, also philosophies, but they have some aspects of objective criteria. We will see this extensively in the future sessions, inshallah. But at the end, overall, they are subjective. Why? Because they are not consistent, and they change, and no ideology is agreed upon from all humans. Of course, there are many ideologies, therefore, they contradict each other. Theories, whether scientific or literary or whatever, there are theories that are not undeniable. That's why it is subjective. They may hold some truth, but not overall totally true. So they were not tested and proven to be correct anytime, anywhere. It's not universal. So now, to make a difference between what is correct and what is false, which is our objective, of course, one needs to have the correct criteria to analyze and measure things before arriving to a conclusion. All right, of course. If you have a false criteria, will you be able to find the truth? That is not logical. That is contradictory. You need the correct criteria to reach the correct conclusion. This is simple and clear. True knowledge. While a subjective criterion is different from one person to another, as it has no specific structure. When we strip it from its outside look, we find that the structure is no structure, and therefore there are no relationships forming inside. It's just chaos. Therefore, it is practically impossible to reach the truth using subjective criteria, because truth is specific and constant. Truth is detached from the person. We need to understand this. Truth, whether specific truth or ultimate truth, is detached from the person. It's detached from your personal feelings and desires, or even your own reasoning. Because like we said, not every time reason is reasonable. So we need a criteria that it is constant and specific. Now I like to give an example here. Let's say that I drew the number 6. All right. And I went away. Then a group of people, 10 people, came and looked at the ground and saw the number. But they disagreed which number it is. Some say it is 6, and some say it is 9. Why? Because some people look at it from the other side, and the others are looking at it from the same way that I wrote it. While people on this side, they also disagreed. Some people say 6, some people say 9. Why did they disagree? Because they have no objective criteria. The objective criteria in this case is me. They need to find me and ask me, did you draw number 6 or number 9? And then my answer will be objective, because I'm the one who put it intentionally. And I, of course, intended to write the number 6. But if they do not find me and they do not know who drew it, then they have no other way to understand or to find the truth. So they agree to disagree and just move on. So this is the difference between objective people and subjective people. Now, when you have a subjective criteria, whenever you look at it, it can give you a different answer. Sometimes you may find the correct answer, but by accident. It's not by design. It's simply by accident and by luck. And even if we ask you to argue and to defend your idea, you will not be able to. You will not have strong proof. Therefore, it is not real knowledge. It is incorrect knowledge, even if you find out and reach the same conclusion that objective people will reach. So what matters is not always the end result, but rather the way and the method that you use to arrive to that conclusion. Because if you have the right method, you will always arrive at the right conclusion. So in conclusion, objective criteria is better suited to reach the truth. Why? Because it is universal. Fact, reason, and inclination, all of these are universal. They exist at any time and any place. It comes from a higher source, omniscient, which is God. Now we are talking about revelation. And these things makes it precise and constant. It does not change. It tells you the truth about the thing by disregarding whether you think it is this or that. Because like we said, truth is detached from the person. Truth is outside of the circle of the beholder. Now I have a question for you regarding the price of knowledge. Does knowledge have a price? The answer is yes and no. Of course, we are talking about money, then yes, people pay money to acquire knowledge, whether it is higher knowledge or lower knowledge, whether it is true knowledge or false knowledge. People pay for both. Of course, some people don't realize it. But this does not mean that it can be measured in material value. Sometimes people pay a lot of money for insignificant things, for the lower knowledge. And this is what's happening in our day and age. Most people are paying incredible amounts of money to learn about the lower knowledge. Here they are given more value and getting less value. So these people are harmed too much by their false knowledge, of course, because that's the real meaning of deception. They are deceived, so they keep on making these bad decisions. However, the ultimate price one will pay is that of bidding farewell to ignorance and possibly comfort and happiness. This is the biggest price. Here I'm not talking anymore about the lower knowledge or the false knowledge. Here I am specifically talking about real knowledge, true knowledge. Why is that? What do we mean by bidding farewell to ignorance and comfort and happiness? There is a relation between consciousness and happiness. This is what we call blissful ignorance. Right? The ignorant person is never troubled or worried because he is not conscious. We have two types of people. People who are awake, both by consciousness and mind and body, and people who are awake simply by body, but their consciousness is asleep. Their real eye, the mind's eye, is closed, shut. The real eyes, I mean the literal eyes, are awake and are open. They go on by their daily life, doing whatever tasks that everyone does, but their consciousness is not awake. And that's the real ignorant person. Now I have here an example. The sheep, cattle, and the shepherd. Now who is the ignorant and the knowledgeable between these two? Of course, the shepherd is the knowledgeable side, while the sheep is ignorant. Now let's compare between the life of the two. The life of the sheep. They do not care about anything. They are not troubled. They are not worried. They simply go on by their lives. Everything is handed to them. By who? By the shepherd. They can simply go on outside. They eat. They procreate. And they live happily. They have a happy life. Their shelter, their security, their food is handed to them in a plate. So what's there to be worried about? You have nothing to worry about. While the shepherd is always in constant worry. He needs to worry about how to take care of his cattle, of his farm. He has to worry about the weather conditions. He has to worry about the safety of his cattle. He has to protect them. He has to worry and to think about the means that he should have in order to keep on doing this. So he has a lot of things to worry. And a worried person is obviously is not a comfortable person. It's the opposite. And a discomfortable person is not a happy person. All right? But we left one thing, the ending. For the sheep, what is their end? Their end is to be slaughtered their wool taken, their babies taken, their milk taken. So they are used, controlled, manipulated, and sacrificed. While the shepherd gains from all of these things. This is the fruit of his labor. This is the reward for all his worrying and all his efforts. So at the end, who wins? Who wins the battle? Of course, the shepherd. The shepherd is in control. He has the decisions. He makes the decisions to his benefit, of course. But he has the knowledge to do so. The sheep, if it knew, of course, that it will be sacrificed at the end, slaughtered and used, would it stay there? Even knowing that it will live a happy and relatively safe life, will it stay there? If it has the knowledge, of course it won't. It will not. But since it does not have the knowledge, or let's say if it has the false knowledge, maybe they think of the shepherd as their own, as their friend. They will never hurt us. They will never, or he will never use us in this way. All right? Then they are deceived at the end. Because the shepherd will definitely end up doing these things regardless. All right? So this is an example. And put anything else in this context, it will give you the same results. So at the end of the day, is it better to be happy and ignorant, or discomfortable, worried, but in control of yourself, in control of your destiny, and awake, conscious? Of course, the latter is better. Now here I have some quotes as food for thought in regards to the concepts that we have just discussed. So Nietzsche, in his book The Gay Science, written in 1882, he says that happiness, the great goal of the modern world, is a falsehood and a mere delusion. So Nietzsche himself says that happiness, he agrees that happiness is the great goal of the modern world. And we can see that clearly. That's the capitalist world that we live in. It's creating richness, which leads to happiness, according to them, is the great goal. Everyone is competing to do that. Whether it was the American dream or now it's the capitalist dream, whatever you are. And this is what even parents are teaching their kids. So this is the great goal of almost everyone. Everyone who is not awake, who is not conscious, is a falsehood and a mere delusion. It's a delusion. Why? Because happiness, first of all, does not last. It's not a tangible thing that you can acquire and keep. It quickly fades away. One of the quickest fading emotions that we have is happiness. Really, it lasts minutes, hours, at most. All right? Days, let's say, days at the best case, if something incredible happens for you. So is that worth making it a goal? It's not something constant, which makes it a delusion, because people keep on chasing it. Once they think they acquired it, they find out that they didn't. And they need to do more and more and more. And it becomes an endless loop of chasing. So this is falsehood in a sense. When you are chasing something that does not really exist in this world, it's falsehood. It's not the truth. There is something even better to put as a great goal, which is the truth. Now, you can attach happiness to things and not make it your overall goal, not the end all be all. Happiness should be like a reward. You don't get a reward every day. You get it when you make something incredible, when you achieve something. You get it. You get a reward. So that's what happiness is, or what it should be. So it should be attached to something greater. The objective that you should set for yourself in life is something greater, and there is nothing great more than the truth itself. In this world, in this mortal and ephemeral world, nothing is greater than the truth. They say, learn the truth, and the truth will set you free. So freedom also is attached to truth, and freedom also is a great thing. All right. Now let's move on to the second quote, which was written by myself. I'm somewhat of a writer, I should say, an underground writer. He whose eyes are open is forever troubled with what is wrong rather than satisfied with what is right. What do we mean by this? Let's analyze and let's apply structuralism to this quote. Who are we talking about? Whose eyes are open? Let's analyze this. Are we talking here about literal eyes? Because everyone has literal eyes and they are open. Even the blind opens his eyes. So, of course, we are not talking about the physical eye. We are talking here about the mind's eye, which means consciousness. So, the person whose consciousness is open, what? Is forever troubled with what is wrong, but not satisfied with what is right. Not to the extremity, but more so, he is troubled. So the troubling takes much more space in the mind of such person than satisfaction. Yes, you can be satisfied about certain things sometimes, but overall, when you are conscious, you are able to detect the many wrong things that are happening around you. When you do so, it is practically impossible to be comfortable, to be happy, because your true knowledge pushes you to correct what is wrong. And of course, no one can correct everything wrong in the world, but we try. That's what we should do. We should try. Okay, everyone should do his best, just like the people of falsehood are doing their best to spread what is wrong. So the people of truth, people of righteousness, should do their best to spread what is right. And this is something that we will see in the next session, inshallah, which deals with dichotomy, counterparts, the two sides. All right, so that's all what we have for this lesson. Hopefully everything is clear and understandable. I apologize once again for the bad internet sometimes. It's cuts off and then gets back. Actually, I'm recording this not in my preferable place. But overall, I think it wasn't too bad and everything was recorded in good quality. Now, we got one last part before we end this first session, which is the quiz. Now, you have the quiz in front of you, of course. People who are going to watch this, they will not be able to answer these questions live, but we do answer them live. So next session, inshallah, in Google Meet, you have the chance to give and participate in this competition. Maybe I can even consider people in the comment section. However, it would be not fair because, of course, people can simply go back in the video and get the answer. But, well, let's assume that everyone who is watching this is truthful and will honestly participate. So these are the 5 most important questions about this lesson. Define knowledge, of course. What is knowledge? And what is the purpose of knowledge? The different types of knowledge. We saw different categories and distinctions by giving examples also. What do we need to have to make such distinction? Of course, we need something to put each in its proper category. We cannot do it arbitrarily. We don't do it because we like it. No, we need to have something to judge by. And the last question, what is the relation between consciousness and happiness? So thank you all for your attention and time. Again, the internet. I said thank you all for your attention and time. And hopefully many of you can join us live because we have still a lot of things to see. Some very interesting concepts. And you can share, of course, and please do. Please share the video with your friends and loved ones, and anyone who you think will be interested by the content of my seminar. And see you, inshallah, in the next session. Take care of yourself.